Hey everyone, welcome back. This is disgusting. Grendel got a new augment, and it made me come back to revisit himself again, and these sounds, seriously, I don't think I've ever heard of use such guttural sounds like this, and it actually sounds gross. Impressive DE. Gluttony frame after all, but you know what else is disgusting? What Gastro does to your enemies. While I don't think Gastro is that crazy of an augment and takes a solid second seat behind the new Hildryn stuff, it's definitely the next best one, and I cannot understate how incredibly satisfying it is to play Grendel this way. He can cast Regurgitate both in his ball form or normal form. Personally, I prefer staying in normal form for better control, and because I actually subsumed his 3 off for Roar or a manual grouping tool. Gastro buffs his Puke Bomb to also create massive AoE explosions, applying gas procs within its lingering AoE every second. Each collision's AoE lingers for 8 seconds at base and scales with duration, but Gastro itself does not have amazing damage, and is only really good enough for a base deal path alone, dealing around 50 to 200k damage. Regardless, you'll want casting speed to deal with the frequent other casts. So if this is the case, why does Gastro still work so well? The mod states it bounces 3 times. This can be from a surface or from hitting an enemy. Each bounce causes the 6 meter AoE of the default ability. Note that while Gastro bounces off surfaces, it instead acts like an infinite body punch through projectile against enemies. Enemies it hits without yeeting them when consuming a bounce stack, and is heavily affected by gravity. Therefore, where the original ability can only hit once, Gastro effectively hits 3 times to triple the original damage of the ability. The main source of DPS from Regurgitate is not the gas procs, but actually the massive AoE toxin proccing 3 times instead of once, and that's why it's so much stronger against these mobs. But this is also why grouping works so well for Gastro, because it allows it to take advantage of another aspect of the augment. Using grouping allows the augment's gas damage to be relevant instead of useless, since that base 250 damage gas cloud will now stack on all grouped enemies, which can hit each other, unlike the main ability's original 2000 damage toxin proc. This grants Gastro quadratic scaling, allowing say 8 grouped enemies with 1 proc of gas each to instantly match the original big AoE toxin hit. 8 enemies with 1 gas proc equals 8 enemies with 1 toxin proc. But wait, there's more. Unlike the toxin proc being one and done on hit, Gastro leaves behind dot clouds that continue to inflict another gas proc per second. Grouping allows you to stack all 3 Gastro dot clouds on the same spot, now allowing you to proc 3 gas procs per second. All of a sudden, it's starting to look even stronger than the original toxin proc. This is what makes Gastro tick. The final result? While not obvious on paper, Gastro makes Regurgitate 5 to 10 times higher damage. You now have 2 options, Roar or manual grouping. Roar results in highest damage since it double dips on the initial hit and then gas and toxin dots again. This is the simplest method and also better for long runs since you can outsource grouping to Nautilus Cordon, Magus Anomaly, or other tools of your choice. Alternatively, the best KPM tool for this, at least at base deal paths, would be a high range build with grouping, since you just want a lot of kills rather than insane damage. Do note that ragdoll grouping can make the hitbox a bit weird, but this can be avoided by just aiming towards the ground of the group. Personally, I still prefer Ensnare to make everything stays put in the gas clouds. Let's see what we did for builds then, shall we? I would strongly recommend using 2 casting speed shards to make Nourish and whatever is in your 3rd ability slot less annoying to cast. Though I didn't use any shards at all, this is a health tanking variant, with preferably Umbral, a vitality and adaptation for very simple gameplay. A single Nourish cast refills your entire health bar, so this just gives you more leeway. If you want to go Endurance, just replace with Rolling Guard plus Catalyzing Shields for Roar. This is the exact build I use for Roar, since I don't need super high range and just a touch for a nicer AoE, and strength becomes more important for double dipping the toxin and gas dots, as well as Roar. For Ensnare or other grouping, at base, you drop Transient Fortitude for Overextended. Now this brings me down to 100 strength, but it's fine since 235 range will pull everything together easily. Continuity is just to make sure Nourish lasts at least 30 seconds to be less annoying to upkeep. Molt Augmented is super important because it gives us strength for both Regurgitate and Roar, basically double dipping our DPS. Arcane Battery is the cheaper version of Energize here, like over 10 times cheaper. It's only about 70 plat for a full set. The only time you spend a lot of energy on Grendel is when you're about to DPS, which puking 5 times in a row over the course of 5 to 10 seconds, and it costs 50 energy a pop. Sucking enemies up also procs Grendel's passive for plus 250 armor per enemy. This is perfect for Arcane Battery, which gives you a bigger energy bar based on your armor, which is exactly when Grendel needs it most. 5 enemies makes this Arcane Grant plus 495 energy max, and even with 0 enemies, it's still plus 120 energy max, which is why it says 370 instead of 250, easily replacing 2 to 3 blue energy shards. Note that while my roar build relies on Nautilus for cordon grouping, if you use Ensnare, then you obviously don't need Nautilus cordon. A good option is a Huras Kubrow instead, since invisibility does not break unless you shoot or melee. After the Koumei changes, there is now also a 3 seconds leeway before Invis expires if there are no enemies within 25 meters of you. That means the Ensnare build with Invis can keep the strength, and instead now drop Vitality and Adaptation for overextended plus rolling guard to cover the moments where you become visible. For your weapons today, the only thing I recommend is bringing a primary with Amalgam Serration for sprint speed, and a melee weapon with movement passive, which most melee and Karnon perk trees have as an option so that you can get around more easily. Focus School is kind of whatever. If you're going Roar, I would recommend Matarai since Strength buffs both your DPS ability and Roar. If you're going Ensnare, I would recommend Zenrix since you'll be casting it very often and burning energy much faster. Zenrix energy regen will be inflated by Nourish as well and may allow you to drop Equilibrium completely for another range mod, like Augur Reach or another Strength mod. The Nautilus variant with Roar is built like this. Cordon obviously to drag everything together, Guardian to give you shield gate back, but it isn't that important on our health and tank versions. Energy generation will come from Synth Deconstruct plus Assault mode, and Momentous Bond for easy Sentinel revives. Nautilus is paired with Tazicor, the new Sentinel weapon from Legs on Fortuna. It's basically a status Amperex and will always beat Grendel to hitting enemies with his Regurgitate. You no longer have to worry about competing with your Sentinel and accidentally stealing kills before it can get Pegasus for health orbs for Synth Deconstruct. This means you're no longer locked to Panzer, Death Cube, or even Duplex Bond for energy. Just the Tazicor on any Sentinel in general plus Synth Deconstruct is enough. Sinister Reach lets it snipe out further. I didn't use Viral this time only because Grendel himself has Nourish. Otherwise, on other kinds of frames in normal builds, yeah, mod it for Viral Heat Radiation. Prime Shred can lead to flickering beams to prime more enemies at once since we only care about status here, not damage. On the Huras Kubrow variant, there isn't much going on the build. You aren't using it for any particular DPS stuff except just stock for perma and viz. Primed Radar still helps, Medipet plus Restorative Bond for a faster pet revives is all that really matters here, since both you and Huras will be invisible the entire time. And that's the Grendel Augment Gastro and how to use it. Cheers! If this is your first time watching, feel free to leave a like or better yet subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'm trying my best to get you new information out always as soon as possible like I've been doing with the Koumei update. Stick around if you want to see interesting memes and builds on a nearly daily basis. Don't miss out on any of that, do you? That'll be it for this video. Thank you all for watching and see you all next time.